This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, I have selected a special piece of music for you today so we can lead into the first story. Ladies and gentlemen, let's remember all the way back to when Maxine Nightingale had a hit with this song. That's right. We're apparently getting right back to where we started from. Jim, what are we meaning here?
Every day is Groundhog Day here in Quebec politics, kids. The festivities began this morning with Liberal MENNIE and economy critic Marc Tanguay was meeting the press. And it's amazing because there's part of me that said maybe Montreal Now should be suing him for copyright infringement because he was pretty much saying what we've been saying on this show for at least like the last 18 months. The CAQ is basically the PQ 2.0. The words, I counted for the words referendum and separatism or separatist. I stopped counting after 10 as he was talking to the press this morning. But he's basically saying, listen, they've hoisted the Jolly Roger. Francois Legault was and is an ardent separatist, and this is right out of the PQ playbook. You don't hold a referendum until you create a sufficient crisis. And this is what he says that Monsieur Legault has been doing since he entered into office, picking fights with Ottawa, adopting controversial laws that pit one section of Quebec society against another. This is all part of the plan, and basically the cherry on this Sunday of separatism, if you will, was parachuted in on the top with the arrival yesterday as a CAQ candidate of Bernard Drinville, not just any PQ MNA, but basically the big old granddaddy of the lost but not lamented Charter of Quebec values. So to a certain extent, it seems the Liberals have figured out that this big fat football that Francois Legault has been fumbling day after day after day, maybe it was time to pick it up and run with it. Maybe it was time to go back to what the Liberals really know how to do, which is scare the pellets out of people over the prospect of separation and essentially campaign like it's 1995. And perhaps they're making some inroads because this afternoon, during question period in the National Assembly, the Premier of Quebec, Francois Legault, stood up and basically pulled the old j'accuse, looking at Marc Tanguay and saying, well, it's interesting because this particular member of the National Assembly supported the Bloc. He supported sovereignty in 1995, as indeed he did. And that wasn't enough for Francois Legault. He looked at Christine Saint-Pierre, a veteran Liberal MNA, saying, you voted yes in the 1980 and the 1995 referendum, which if you just do the math for a second, shows it was like a long time ago. But all that to tell you, it's going to get nasty. Everyone's going to be pointing the finger at the other guy. But the fact is that big old separatist cat is out of the bag, and it's going to be impossible for this not to be a factor between now and October. It's going to be impossible for us not to be hearing the R word on a very regular basis, especially when thus far the CAQ, to a certain extent with the complicity of the federal government, has essentially been dismantling any connection with the rest of the country, saying, oh, but we're doing it from within Canada. We're going to blow up this bridge and this bridge and this bridge. We're going to take control of this, and this. We're going to be a Quebec nation. Oh, yeah, but we'll still do it inside of Canada. Well, it's all nonsense, of course. And I think Tanguay is 100% right. I think the suspicions many of us had, certainly many of our listeners and myself had, back in 2018 with Francois Legault, had the leopard changed his spots? We weren't sure. I guess a lot of us were hoping that he had, but it's quite clear that he hasn't. And by the way, just to address this line, I realize, Jason Mayoff, he's doing the news, but just to recall that, yes, Francois Legault did say a CAQ government will not hold a referendum. This is the same Francois Legault who guaranteed, who pledged in 2018 that provincial election was the last that would be fought under a first-past-the-post system. Guess what? We're having a first-past-the-post system election this October because why? Because Francois Legault, and quite frankly every other party, knows that if you've got the wind in your sails, it can be very, very helpful. You can, in the case of the CAQ in the last election, win 75% of the seats in the National Assembly with 39% of the vote.
I want to go back to what you just said. So, yes, it looks like this whole, they're going to bring separation back. This is just another way to hold a referendum. Yes, it's an issue, but Jim, is it enough of an issue, do you think, to sway people's votes?
I think so. I think if it's, listen, I'd like to say, okay, before I go any further, I'll speak for myself. I'd like to say that all of our listeners hang on every word I say, that it is chiseled not only into their memories, but into their very consciousness. But it is, people have real lives. They go on. They don't pay attention to stuff. However, referendum, separation, that uncertainty, and for those voters old enough, those reliable voters old enough to remember certainly the experience of 95 and perhaps even the experience of 1980 as voters, those were leaps into an unknown. And it was, in the end, Quebecers' good sense prevailed, and not because of some, fervent patriotism. I think a lot of Anglos felt the same way. I just don't need this kind of chicane. I don't need this uncertainty, especially now. And the Quebec that François Legault doesn't really like to talk about out loud, the one that's facing all kinds of economic challenges, the one that's facing all kinds of labor shortages, a healthcare system that's falling apart. That's the Quebec he doesn't like to talk about. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that's the Quebec the vast majority of people here experience. So honestly, if you turn around and say, the icing on the cake, courtesy of François Legault, is going to be another referendum on sovereignty, believe me, I think at that point, people will start paying attention.
Okay.
It's got me already thinking that the debate is going to be really entertaining. And I know we're months away from that yet, and we're not getting one in English, but the French one should be very feisty.
Well, there's two of them. You're 1,000% correct, but I would respectfully submit you will see that debate fought out in bits and pieces in the months to come. And if you don't think that the Liberals, at least, and perhaps even the Conservatives, if they see it's getting some, if it's giving some gas to the Liberals, will hammer away at the idea that this is just, a camouflaged, separatist party wearing camo netting with a bunch of maple leaves on top of it, but nobody's fooled. The fact is, this is what the agenda is. The veteran separatist leader of the party, who is rumbling star separatist candidates, but no, we're going to do it all inside of Canada. I think, moment donné, most Quebecers will take a look at that and go, MENNIE.
So you have two separatist candidates already, right?
Yeah.
Bernard Dranville, the latest. I want to ask you two things. Number one, will there be another? And if there's a third, what sort of trend does that signal? And what did you think of Bernard Dranville, his interview yesterday? We played part of it back with Maya on CTV. Yeah. And I found that, I don't know, I don't even know the right word to describe it. I was kind of, I don't want to say disgusted, but I just found it bizarre that he's kind of assuming the mantle of a CAQ member. He's not even been elected, and he's representing the government's position. I found that a bit odd as well. Mm-hmm. What did you think?
Well, I thought, first of all, he had to give, and quite frankly, I think you'll be seeing a lot more of Monsieur Dranville on English media simply because, with all due respect, his English is a lot better than François Legault's. And secondly, listen, if he can, and this guy's a former journalist. He knows how the game is played. He knows how to give good quote, good interview. If he can put a kinder face on the CAQ, and more importantly, make people forget that he was the cabinet minister who stood up in front of the pictograms depicting faceless Muslims, faceless Sikhs, faceless observant Jews, and faceless observant Christians or Catholics, and depicted them as being not allowed in Quebec public life. If he can make people forget that, well, he'll have done he'll pulled off a total Houdini. But that's the big challenge, and it's not going to be made any easier by the kind of talk we're hearing from the Liberals today, and the kind of talk we may well be hearing from the Conservatives as well, and they are still very much in the game.
Okay.
I was telling Aaron earlier that I've held on to my pamphlet. Like when they handed them out door to door. Remember, we all got them in the mailbox. I couldn't believe it then. I have it now, and I'm sure in 25 years from now, I still won't believe that we actually got that. We were given that.
Yeah, and by the way, I should point out, maybe I should repost this or whatever. I still have a coffee cup that I had made, which shows Pauline Marois, Jean-François Lisée, and Bernard Dranville all in hijabs.
Sure.
So maybe it's time to put that back up and say, hey, remember this? It's not that long ago. And Jim, I said at one point during the interview that we played, I said, once a separatist, always a separatist. And I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think it's a separatist. Yeah, I think it's if you're for real. I mean, Jacques Parizeau would chortle when somebody said, "Well, shouldn't you be separatist?" Is such a negative sounding word. You should call yourself a sovereign. He said, "No, I'm a separatist." Jacques Parizeau said it out loud, at least. And now we have Laurent Granville, who's trying to say,
nationalist.
Well, yes, I realize I've devoted my entire life to this, okay? But I've realized it's dépassé, and I can't think of an equivalent where people are supposed to buy into that. And as I say, I hate it when people say, well, I speak for the people of Quebec. I can't believe Quebecers are buying into this above maybe 10%. That they're seeing this and they're going, oh boy, it's like here we go again.
Okay.
James, right back where we started from, as the song said.
There you go. James MENNIE at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adama.